Welcome to the lab session of Epidemiology in Action 2020. My name is Celine Nadon, and I will be facilitating or teaching the lab portion of the course. I am a chief at the National Microbiology Laboratory in Winnipeg, where my lab is responsible for lab-based surveillance, outbreak detection, and outbreak response activities for foodborne or enteric diseases. And so this includes things like PulseNet Canada as well as some other activities. I've been doing that since about 2006. Well, I haven't been in the exact same position the whole time, but essentially I've been involved in lab-based surveillance and outbreak response that whole time. And so I've had the privilege to teach in this course pretty much that whole time. And when I look back at my lectures over the years, it's really interesting to see how much has changed and how much has stayed the same. Of course, the basic biology has remained pretty constant, but the technology that we can use to put that into practice and make it useful has really changed over the years. And we'll be touching on some of that in the videos today. Get my system working here. Here's an overview of what we'll be covering. We're going to start with part one, which is what does the lab actually do? Then we'll go into some specifics of the actual science of the identification and characterization of bacteria. In part three, we'll then bring in genomics and how that fits into IDing and characterizing bacteria. We will be focused on bacteria today. And so if you have a specific interest in viruses or parasites, please do feel free to reach out and I can link you up with some additional resources. Then in part four, we're going to talk about how genomics fits into the practice of lab-based surveillance, as well as outbreak response. And then in part five, we'll get into, well, how do you read and interpret whole genome sequencing results, followed by tips and tricks on what to watch out for and how to interpret whole genome sequencing results. Part seven, we will go over the details of how the whole genome sequencing results and genomics in general are put into practice. How does it actually work, boots on the ground, in your routine epidemiological practice? And then that will segue into part eight, which is a description of Canada's overall transition to genomics, not just for foodborne disease, but in general for all infectious diseases. And then in part nine will just be a closing as well as some ideas for the future. So I would encourage you to really try to view the lab as a component of your multidisciplinary practice instead of, the lab is here and epi is here and they're two distinct different things. In my own experience, having them be an integrated collaborative space, that really is where the magic can happen. So we are trying to create a unicorn with an integrated lab and epi understanding. And that can be challenging to do, of course, but it can be done. And I would encourage you to, wherever you land in your postings and your position, I would encourage you to learn as much about the basic biology of whatever area that you're in. And I think that will really help serve you well in just having a common vocabulary and exchange of dialogue with the microbiologists or other scientists that you'll be relying on in a multidisciplinary way. It certainly has served me well in terms of my own career and, of course, my training is in microbiology. Although I think, if I am doing this from my home office, am I actually still a microbiologist? But it's another discussion. But when I did like a survey of my books, and I'm a hard copy book kind of person, and a solid 50% of the books on my shelf are epidemiology, and well, this one is an old version, but they're my go-to books because it's not my first language. Microbiology is my first language, but having that common understanding really helps serve me and our work well in having that common dialogue and helping to create that unicorn. Okay, so this is the end of the introduction, so you can go ahead and proceed to part 1.